Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this edition of Weekly Drip. I'm really excited to bring some coffee books to y'all. Maybe if you have some downtime or in your spare time and you want to do some light reading about coffee, we have a set of books here that we wanted to recommend for you guys to be able to read. And there's everything from the beginner, there's the coffee enthusiast reading material, then we get all the way into the intermediate and kind of professional books about coffee. So for the first one I wanted to start with, also before I get into that, thank you guys for submitting your recommendations on our Instagram post as well. There was some really good stuff on there. I know there was one mentioned about the Coffee Atlas by James Hoffman. That's a really good resource for people that are wanting to learn more about coffee around the world. It does a really good job of kind of breaking down all of the different regions of the world and talks about their history and the coffee that comes from those areas. So that was a really good recommendation, and there was a few others, so make sure you guys check that out on our post. So let's get started. This one here, this is a really cool book. It's called Coffee Nerd. This is written by Ruth Brown. The reason I like this book is because this comes from someone that isn't necessarily in the industry. They're just kind of your everyday coffee drinker that really enjoys drinking coffee and learning more about it. So she wrote this book with that in mind. It goes kind of from all the way the history of coffee to brewing coffee. There's some really cool pictures and graphics in here. Let's see, one here, it shows you the different parts of the roaster. I know there's one that kind of breaks down the anatomy of the coffee cherry, as well as a few recipes in here and some tips on brewing coffee. But it's just a really fun read. This one, if you guys want to pick this one up, it's relatively inexpensive, but it's a really good read. Kind of one above that, if you want to start getting more into kind of the art and craft of coffee, this is kind of an enthusiast guide to selecting. It talks about roasting and brewing coffee. This one is really neat because it goes a little bit more in depth, not only on how to brew coffee, but roasting coffee as well. So you can see in here, it talks about commercial micro roasting. It talks about roasting single origin coffee beans, different roast levels. It also gets into the different brewing parameters, and it talks a little bit about espresso as well. So this one is if you want to dive down a little bit deeper into coffee. This is a really good book for a coffee enthusiast if you want to learn more about kind of the inner workings of coffee and making the beverage, roasting as well. We also have a professional a book here that we like to recommend. This is the Barista Bible. This is Perfect Espresso. This is the second edition. This one came out in about 2008. So it's a little bit older of a book, but it has some really good information in it. This is really good for step-by-step if you want to learn more about being a barista, how you can go about doing that. It breaks everything down from how you should tamp, the order you should make drinks, the efficiency. All of that goes into really good depth. It has some really good explanations in here. It talks about espresso extraction. There's a few things that are mentioned, like this one here talks about pressure profiling and why that's important and the benefits that come from that. So again, this is a really cool book, and a neat thing about this book is it actually comes with several smaller versions, so it dives deeper. It gives you kind of a few dictionaries. So this one really is really cool. It's the dictionary. It's the language of espresso. So just a few of them here. It talks about the crema. What exactly is the crema? It talks about cupping protocols, decaffeination. So it's a really cool resource guide for people that are wanting to learn more about how to be a barista. This is a conversation guide for questions about espresso. So if someone comes up and asks you these questions, if you're in the barista profession, how you can answer those, what are some good answers to them. Just a quick one here. It talks about how do you know when it's time to change the burrs on your grinder. So that's a really good information for a barista to know if someone just happens to come in and ask you guys. But again, it can be for anyone, any coffee enthusiast, as well as home baristas too. So if you're just someone who really loves coffee and you want to learn how to be a better barista at home, these are really good books. This one's really cool. It has some recipes that you can scroll through and kind of look through. It talks about cappuccinos, for instance. It gives you kind of a breakdown of tips when you're making this drink. What cappuccinos look like around the world. So, coffee is made differently in different parts of the world. It kind of gives you a breakdown on that. It talks about different types of coffee. So Vienna coffee, for instance, and some recipes for making that. So again, this is a really cool book for people that are wanting to be, a little bit more efficient at home in their barista skills, or they're a professional barista and want to dive deeper into coffee knowledge. And then we also have some books here from the SCA. So the SCA is the Specialty Coffee Association. They release really, really cool series of books every now and then. And we've picked a few that we really like. This one is The Basics of Brewing Coffee. And one thing that's really nice about all of the SCA books and their resources and materials, they have published journals that they are pulling their information from. So in the back of all of these, you can see where they've actually cited their sources. So if you wanted to dive even deeper than what they have in this SCA book, you can then just flip to the back. You can see all of the different sources that they're pulling from. And again, these are from literature that's been cited and published in journals that they pull from. So it's very research oriented. So this is a really cool one. It's it's The Basics of Brewing Coffee. If you're wanting to learn, how to brew a better cup of coffee at home and what goes into that, this is a really good book to start to dive into that. It talks about the brewing control chart. It talks about, here's a brewing control chart here. So if you have the equipment or you just want to use your sensory skills, you can kind of measure how your brew turns out based on this chart. It also talks about how to use the chart. Just a lot of cool different diagrams and formulas for brewing coffee in this one. This one is the Coffee Freshness Handbook. I believe this one came out pretty recently, 2018. So this talks about the importance of coffee freshness, what all goes into keeping coffee fresh, how long. So there's a lot of different things that go into the freshness of coffee. What are the chemical drivers of freshness? It talks about the aroma. It even talks about how you should store whole bean coffee in here. So there's a lot of really, really good information in here. It goes into packaging. So if this is something that you're interested in, and if you're wondering, how long you can keep coffee fresh for, this is a really good resource for that. And again, this is from the Specialty Coffee Association. You can buy these just through their website. And then I believe members get a discount on the books as well. This is a really cool one. This is actually a really good resource that we use here in the shop. This is the SCA Water Quality Handbook. This has a lot of good information on if you wanted to build your own water, essentially. If you wanted to introduce different types of minerals and see the effects on them, it tells you how you should do that. It also goes into different diagrams that have, how you should treat water. If your water, if you measure it and it falls within certain, parameters in the diagram, it actually goes in detail how you can, different treatment methods. So whether you should use demineralizer, a water softener, and it goes into the choices of water treatment based on your starting composition of water. So this is a really good resource for people, that are in the industry, but I guess also if you're just at home and you have the means to test your water, this goes into really good information and has a lot of good resources for you to be able to do that. This is also a quick preview into what we'll be doing on our next weekly drip. So we're really excited to show you guys more about water chemistry. So make sure you tune in next week. Again, thank you all for submitting your recommendations. And if you do have some more recommendations, feel free to throw those down in the comments. We'll be happy to share those with people. But thanks for tuning in. We hope you guys can pick up a few of these coffee books and do some reading. See you next time.